My father stood on my front porch in the pouring rain, holding a damp manila envelope with a look of absolute entitlement. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't offer an apology. Instead, he shoved a pre-printed residency agreement into my chest and said, "We're moving into the master suite on Monday. You can take the guest room." For years, my parents had poured every dime of their $580,000 retirement fund into rescuing my older brother, treating his endless business failures and reckless gambles like temporary bad luck. But now the money was gone. The golden child had vanished, and they expected me to hand over the key to the house I'd worked my entire adult life to buy. I looked my father straight in the eyes, handed the damp papers right back to him, and said 3 words that shattered our entire family dynamic. "Not tonight, not ever." My name is Mia Johnson. I'm 30 years old, and I spent my entire 20s learning what it feels like to be completely invisible in my own family. While my older brother Julian was treated like royalty, I was the daughter who was expected to work hard, stay quiet, and never ask for help. My parents treated Julian like a financial prodigy, despite the fact that every single idea he had turned into an absolute train wreck. It started small, a $5,000 loan for a boutique clothing line that went under in 6 months, followed by $10,000 for an app that never got built. But my parents didn't see failure. They saw genius waiting to be recognized. To them, Julian was always just one step away from becoming a millionaire, and any setback was always someone else's fault. Meanwhile, I paid my own way through college, worked 2 jobs, and built a career as a financial analyst. I never asked my parents for a single penny because I knew where every extra dime went, straight into Julian's pockets. Over a decade, my parents drained their liquid savings, sold off investments, and continually bailed him out of reckless gambles, all while treating me like a background extra in their life story. I learned early on that in our house, Julian was the golden child, and I was just the backup plan. By the time Julian hit 33, his failures escalated from minor missteps to absolute financial catastrophe. He walked into my parents' living room with shiny brochures and a smooth sales pitch for a can't-miss luxury real estate development project. He promised them guaranteed returns, high-yield dividends, and early retirement in paradise. All he needed was capital, and lots of it. I saw right through the numbers. Looking at the prospectus, it was clear the project was built on pure speculation, high-risk leverage, and zero concrete assets. As a financial analyst, I begged my parents to stay away. I sat them down at the kitchen table, showed them the spreadsheets, and warned them that putting their nest egg into this scheme was financial suicide. My father scoffed, calling me jealous and cynical, while my mother accused me of constantly trying to tear my brother down. They completely ignored my warnings and emptied their entire $580,000 retirement savings. They liquidated their 401ks, wiped out their emergency funds, and handed every single cent over to Julian. Less than 8 months later, the entire venture collapsed like a house of cards. The luxury developer defaulted, the funds disappeared into thin air, and the reality set in. $580,000 was gone forever. But the worst part wasn't just the money. The moment the checks cleared and the venture crashed, Julian stopped answering his phone. The golden child vanished into thin air, ghosting our parents completely. Left destitute, bankrupt, and facing immediate eviction from their rented condo, my parents were suddenly left with nothing. 3 weeks after their eviction notice arrived, the consequences of their choices finally knocked on my door, literally. It was raining heavily on a Tuesday evening when I heard a sharp, aggressive pounding at my front entrance. I opened the door to find my father standing on the porch, drenched, holding a damp manila envelope with a look of absolute entitlement. My mother stood right behind him, her arms crossed, glaring at me as if I was the one who had ruined their lives. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't offer a breath of greeting. Instead, he shoved a pre-printed residency agreement into my chest and pushed past me into the foyer. He looked around my 3-bedroom home, the home I had worked 16-hour days to buy and pay for entirely on my own, and laid out their demands. He told me they were moving into the master suite on Monday, so I would need to pack up my things and relocate to the smaller guest room down the hall. On top of that, they expected me to cover their monthly living expenses, buy their groceries, and absorb their personal credit card debts. My mother casually added that since I made good money as an analyst, it was only fair that I supported the family now that they were struggling. I stood there in disbelief, holding the damp papers. The sheer audacity was overwhelming. I handed the folder right back to my father, pointed toward the open door and said, "Not tonight. Not ever." My father's face flushed red with rage. He started screaming that I was a cold-hearted, selfish monster who was turning her back on her own blood. But I held my ground, shoved him back out onto the porch, locked the door, and left them standing in the rain. The morning after I locked the door, the real fallout began. My parents launched a ruthless, coordinated smear campaign across Facebook and our extended family group chats. They posted tearful updates portraying themselves as abandoned, heartbroken seniors who were being forced onto the street by their wealthy, heartless daughter. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with furious messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, calling me ungrateful, cruel, and a disgrace to the family name. It didn't stop online. 3 days later, my Uncle Robert and Aunt Ellen ambushed me right outside my office building during my lunch break. They cornered me near the parking garage, raising their voices so loud that my coworkers began to stare. Uncle Robert grabbed my arm, demanding that I do the right thing and hand over my extra house keys to my parents immediately. When I pulled away and refused to back down, he sneered that family always comes before personal pride. That aggressive encounter was the final straw. Realizing my personal safety and property were under serious threat, I immediately scheduled an urgent consultation with a real estate and estate planning attorney. But while digging through my mortgage records to ensure everything was secure, my lawyer uncovered something horrifying. 6 months prior, my parents had filed a formal inquiry with my lender attempting to attach a legal lien to my home. They had submitted a forged document claiming my father was a hidden co-signer on my original loan from 8 years ago. They had been plotting to take my house long before the rain hit my porch. Discovering that forged lien document transformed my grief into sharp, decisive legal strategy. My attorney didn't waste a single hour. We immediately filed a formal fraud alert with my mortgage lender, locked down my credit profiles across all 3 bureaus, and updated the security system at my house with high-definition cameras and smart locks. Next, my lawyer drafted a heavy-handed cease and desist letter, coupled with an official no trespassing notice served directly to my parents. Knowing they would ignore a letter, I set up a trap. I agreed to meet them at a busy, neutral local diner under the pretense of discussing a potential housing compromise. They walked in looking smug, fully expecting me to hand over a set of house keys and an apology. My mother even brought a notepad to list the groceries she wanted me to buy. Instead of keys, I slid 2 folders across the table. The first contained a copy of the police report I had opened for mortgage fraud and identity theft, detailing their forged co-signing attempt. The second contained a certified bank record proving I had paid every single dime of my down payment and mortgage independently since day one. I watched the color drain from my father's face as I explained, in a cold, measured voice, that if they ever stepped foot on my property or tried to claim a single brick of my home again, the police would arrest them for felony forgery and fraud on the spot. My father tried to sputter an excuse, but the evidence was ironclad. They were cornered, trapped by their own illegal paper trail. 2 days after the diner confrontation, the golden child finally crawled out of hiding. Julian showed up at my front door, pretending to be the deeply concerned older brother. He tried to play the role of peacemaker, speaking in a smooth, patronizing tone as he urged me to do my duty as a daughter. He insisted that family comes first and that I had an ethical obligation to step up, take our parents in, and pay off their debts so that he wouldn't be burdened with their care. I didn't argue. I simply invited him inside, walked over to my desk, and opened a laptop screen right in front of him. Using my professional network and private investigative tracking, I had traced the exact digital footprint of where that $580,000 real estate fund had actually gone. The money hadn't vanished in a bad market deal. Julian had secretly siphoned over $200,000 of our parents' retirement savings directly into offshore personal accounts in the Cayman Islands right before the venture defaulted. He had intentionally let our parents take the fall while securing a massive golden parachute for himself. I brought my parents into a group video call right then and there. I shared my screen, presenting the bank statements, account numbers, and wire transfer logs to everyone at once. My father stared at the monitor in absolute horror as the illusion of his precious, perfect son shattered into pieces. My mother began to weep uncontrollably, realizing that the child they had bankrupted themselves for had spent the last 8 months living off their stolen life savings. Julian turned pale, stammered a pathetic excuse, and slammed my laptop shut before fleeing into the night, leaving our parents ruined, exposed, and utterly broken by the truth. In the aftermath of that crushing revelation, the dust finally settled on my family's lies. With the evidence of offshore wire transfers, several creditors and defrauded investors moved quickly against Julian, forcing him into a spiral of legal battles and asset seizures. Meanwhile, my parents were forced to face their harsh new reality. With no home, no retirement, and no golden child to rescue them, they had to move into a tiny, government-subsidized assisted apartment, living strictly off their meager monthly Social Security checks. I kept my home, my hard-earned peace, and my financial independence completely intact. I blocked their numbers, cut off the toxic extended relatives who had defended them, and finally closed the chapter on a lifetime of being treated like a second-class daughter. Standing up to family isn't easy, but setting unbreakable boundaries is sometimes the only way to save yourself from people who would gladly pull you under just to stay afloat. So I have to ask you, would you have taken them in after what they did? Or would you have locked the door like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.